studying design in Sweden. Now, to set the context, I studied computer science in India and then I moved to Jönköping University in Sweden and I studied user experience design and IT architecture. And no, I did not make up that name, that's actually the name of the course that I took. And this video is going to be particularly useful for those people who are outside of Sweden, outside of Scandinavia, and better yet, if you're outside of Europe altogether, because that's my context and that's my background. And some of the things that I'll be talking about will be about Sweden and studying in Sweden in general, and it will not be about any specific university or any one specific discipline in design. Although I studied user experience design, probably if you are studying the same thing, yes, you might be able to relate to this more than people studying, let's say, industrial design or fashion design. But nevertheless, I think maybe at least some part of the video, I hope, would be relatable for most of you guys out there. So yeah, this video is going to be highly opinionated, but it's going to be based on my experience. Yes, your experience could differ. Okay, so first things first, I would say that anything about education in Sweden is I would say the full package is the reason to consider studying in Sweden. There's not one specific reason that I could point towards and say, okay, universities in Sweden is why you should consider studying in Sweden. It's actually the full package, and there's a consistency across your full experience of studying here. And that's the reason why I would say maybe you should consider studying here. Yes, definitely, if what matters to you is a really good university and a really good infrastructure, then maybe other universities can offer those things. But not many people are aware of the fact that design schools in Sweden are actually at least worthy to be considered. Okay, so first things first, I would say if you aren't aware of it already, this might be obvious to some people, but education in Scandinavia relies heavily on the independent or the individual's willingness to learn independently. I'm not sure if I phrased that sentence correctly, but I'm sorry about that if I haven't. Anyway, so basically what that means is that you have to be willing to learn yourselves. The job of the teacher is not to spoon feed you by getting you a job or bringing employers to your university after your university gets over and to basically spoon feed you. The thing is, you come to the university, like you have an app that says, I mean, yes, this is going to be based on my experience. I think this is the same for every university across Sweden. You're not going to be here from morning to evening. There's going to be specific time periods, and then you come, you take classes. If you don't come, it's your loss, or if it's your win. And yeah, so you take up the courses for your own thing, right? You can, in most of the universities offer, and things are really relaxed here. Okay, like for example, if you want to continue your university studies after you started your studies and then you thought, okay, maybe this is not the right option, maybe I want to study and then I want to think about whether or not I want to continue, you can pause your studies. So those kinds of options do exist. So things are really relaxed here. So, and for that reason, independent learning is sort of a very interesting thing that you can consider as an advantage in Sweden education. Secondly, I would say sustainability is a very important thing in Sweden in general. What I mean by that is, at least from at least about where I come from, which is India, a lot of emphasis is put towards, okay, when we buy something, we look at, okay, how things look and how those quality look. I mean, the quality of those products, but we don't consider the thing about sustainability is like the how long lasting is or the thing that we buy. Okay, for example, you buy a furniture, or you buy, let's say, an electronic, or whatever is it that you're buying, um, whatever is it that you're making, you want to make sure that it is as long lasting. Now, Dieter Rams, if I have pronounced it correctly, is a famous student from Bauhaus School, if I'm correct. But he's a very famous designer who wrote this book called 10 Principles of Design. I haven't actually read that book like properly. I want to get hands on with that book, but based on obviously the summaries that I've read in across the internet, he actually says that sustainability and long lastingness of a product and honesty of a product is incredibly important in design. And you can see that across everything in Sweden. Like, sustainability is a very important thing. Like, when you, let's say, IKEA, for example, I know, like, IKEA is a cheap furniture shop, but it's just not the shop itself, like the shopping experience, but they actually have systems in place to recycle the products and sort of and be environmental friendly and those kinds of things, which are like, it's not just about environmental friendly, but the recycling things, the long lastingness. So if you buy something, it shouldn't be like a throwaway thing. Like, right, you get it right. They, you buy something and then the next day you just throw it. Buy a lot of plastics, just throw it the next day. I mean, that's a good design is sort of as long lasting, and you optimize on that feature. So Sweden, I guess, is really good in that. So when you come here, one of the things you'll learn is to make your or design things that are most sustainable. At least I sort of find that across everywhere here in Sweden, not just in universities, but I would say that's something to consider. And that's why concepts like systems thinking is incredibly like sort of useful, at least when I learned, because that all comes back to, okay, sustainable thinking or sustainability is about long-term thinking, right? So you ensure that something lasts for as long as possible, or you think about the long-term consequences of the things that you're making or the things that you're buying or whatever it is that you're getting, right, or you're building. So the long-term, all the concepts that are embedded within this thing is incredibly useful, and that's why I think sustainability is a very useful thing. So that's something to consider as well. All right, the third thing I would say would be is that there is a visual consistency in the visual language around here. Now, I am a very I spend a lot of time with nature. Like, every single day I go out for a walk, and there's a lot of visual consistency here. Now, there's one building here that sort of, you can see this design across Sweden everywhere. Now, this is not particular to Sweden, but Europeans in general give a lot of attention towards establishing a universal language in a city. Like, so that when you take a photo of anywhere across the city, people could say, hey, so this comes from Zurich, or this photo is Stockholm, this photo comes from Austria, like Vienna, or Milan, or any of these cities, because every city has a unique design language and design systems or whatever that is. So you sort of so this might not be unique to Sweden, but I would say Sweden at least has sort of implemented this in more sort of micro levels, if that makes sense. So what that means is, if you go to, let's say, the bus, they have thought about, okay, there's an app, you can also buy tickets on the app, and you can sort of buy a 24 hours 7 weeks ticket and stuff like that. When you think about Okay, so this is a credit card generation, or I mean a cashless generation. I mean, yeah, so cashless generation. So you want to think about, okay, well, if you have a card, how are you going to use this? Because you can't keep going and buying the card or the physical thing or the physical ticket all the time. If you are someone like me who sort of prefers to buy things online, so if you're someone like that, I would say uh, making use of digital tools or digital transformation, or yeah, so basically making use of all the tools and resources around you is sort of, again, it comes back to that sustainable aspect, right? So to make things last and to utilize everything, to utilize all the space, all the resources, you have to build something that is useful. So the credit card, or everything like the bus system and everything, there is a visual clarity in the language. So, no, for example, you want to interact with the university, you don't have to come to the university just to submit an assignment. Now you come to university, obviously not every university is the same. Yes, you need to come to the university, but smaller things, you can talk to the teachers on email and stuff like that. But back in my bachelor's, if you want to interact with the teachers, you like in India, you still have to come physically to the teacher, and it's not that you, it's not like you can't do that in Sweden. It's, yes, you can, obviously, but everything has a method and sort of a system put in place. So that's sort of like everything sort of I guess is like there's a visual consistency. And when we talk about visual consistency, and not just visual, to so to say, the system, I think systematic consistency would be a right appropriate word for it. But we also talk about Japan's visual consistency, because the clarity in the language, or the visual language that they have, like the buildings, like every object in the Japanese architecture or the Japanese environment or the Japanese society is sort of clear, I guess. So when they build anything, what is the idea of minimalism? Like the idea of minimalism is to, or essentialism is to make things, buy things that are that are just essential to that item. Okay, so that can be, for example, if you're a minimalist, you'll only buy things that bring about any value for you. So buying like 10 pairs of shoes and like 20 pairs of t-shirts or shirts that don't add any value to your life, that's not a minimalistic life. What's the definition of minimalism for you will not be the same for me. So that's why a lot of people have also misunderstood the definition of minimalism. Anyway, so the point I'm trying to make here is that there is a visual clarity in language, I guess, and it's in my opinion, in Sweden, I would say, after, like, I've not visited Japan, so I can't speak for Japan. This video is about Sweden, so I would say there is a better visual consistency, or at least you can understand the system if you understand the mental model around here. So I would say that's good, because everything in India is sort of chaotic, if that makes sense. So if you want to buy a bus ticket, you sort of have to go to the bus and you have to interact with the people and then get the bus ticket, which is not a chaotic system, so to say, but it does not utilize all the resources that people have. Or maybe it does. Like, for example, most people in India don't have a credit card or a debit card, and it sort of makes sense there. But again, it's sort of and I guess again, the thing about India is that when you compare India with Sweden, I guess this is becoming more of a comparison. I don't want to make this about a comparison, but I want to bring about a point here, is that, I think obviously everything, like the design depends on the society or the culture, okay? whatever is your society around you or the culture around you, that's the easier it becomes to build a system. So the more there is a clarity, the visual clarity in the society, the easier it is to build a system around it. So if there is no, if the more wicked a system is, or the more wicked the rules are, the more difficult it is, because you have to do more analysis, you have to do more study, or more sort of building in order to arrive at that sort of design. And to do that in India is more difficult than it is to achieve that in Sweden. Guess that sort of makes sense. If it doesn't, you can leave your questions on the comment section below, and I can answer those questions. Lastly, I would say, talking about specific universities, I did mention that I will not talk about any specific universities, but I do want to say that there are not just universities, there are also smaller institutions like Hyper Island. There's this place called hyperisland.com. I did not study here, but I would say that there are similar institutions like these that focus on delivering hands-on knowledge or things that you will utilize in the industry. So I just want to make you aware of that, of the fact that there exist these options as well. Now, also speaking about design degrees for a minute. Design degrees. Okay, so when you get a design degree in Sweden, I would say the degrees in Sweden are actually are surprisingly more valuable than degrees, at least in India, because like degree programs in India are highly impractical. Like they're very heavily theory based. Okay, so what that means is that in India, you, or at least in, I think even in America or United States, you would and I've heard of it in several countries, you would basically go to lectures. You would you'll attend lectures, and then once the lecture is over, you study for the exams, and then you go to the exam. You take the exam, and then you pass or you fail. You either redo the exam, or you basically get the degree, and then you start to relearn whatever you just learned, plus whatever needs to be done for the market. And as I said, when you study something in the university, it's not really applicable in your real job, because and I have to say this is general about design degrees in general, is that if you're studying in a university, you have to know that you are not studying industry related skills. You're not going there to gain like, say, skills. But when you complete a design degree, you will have an understanding of how to think like a designer, or how to work like a designer. That gives you the sort of, let's say, the mindset. Okay, now you can go and learn the actual skills that are necessary to get into the industry. Now, while I was in the design program, yes, I did got to play with Figma or Sketch, which are some of the tools that are used in the user interface and user experience design job. Now, these are some of the tools that we use in the real jobs, but they're not intensive. That's really, most of the things we learned are things like design philosophy, systems thinking, and even programming, for example, just to sort of expose you to different fields, and to show you guys that that design encompasses almost everything. And the idea of design, or what design is all about, is you abstract complex systems, you abstract complex mental models, and you create solutions to those problems. And to understand the extent of that problem, and to sort of propose solutions to wicked problems, you need to understand the sort of the full system, and that's what it sort of facilitates for you. And the knowledge that you gain out of a university could be useful to make really impactful decisions there might not be skills that you directly apply in your job. And I want to make you like really aware of it. So basically, to sum this up, like the last video I made about, is computer science degree really important to a tech job? Similar to that, you actually don't need a design degree in order to be a designer. Now, if you are considering to live here, it's worthy to point that if you are going to study design in Sweden, you do need to know the language, because the job of a designer is not just to sit in Figma and design pretty things. Although yes, aesthetic is important, the reason to the one of the things that's important here is you need to learn Swedish, because you will actually talk with clients, you will talk with customers, your colleagues, and you will have references to metaphorical languages. It will not be talking it in academic or research terms only. So let's say you're in your workplace, we'll be talking about problems that your customers are facing, and you'll be often, you'll be, and your colleagues might be pointing towards terms that are not sort of something that you can define in absolute terms. So how are you going to understand problems if you don't understand the metaphorical language of that society? So therefore, regardless of wherever you want to be a designer, if you want to be a really good designer who understands people, you will need to understand the language. You will not just the basic language, but the metaphorical language, in order to have a fruitful long-term career in that place. So yeah, that's really important for you to understand. Like, it's just not important to, it's just not enough to understand the language. So I hope this has been useful for you to consider, or if you are considering, if you're not considering. So Sweden is a great place, and same goes for, I guess, Norway and Finland. There are some pretty good universities over there. They might not be some of the best ranking institutions. Like Sweden, I guess, has some really good ranking in terms of universities. But I would say, like Sweden is an egalitarian society. They really don't care about whether or not they stand out in the crowd. But so yeah, there's also a thing in Sweden called Jante-law, which is that you don't basically boast about what you have. If you have something that you're happy about, keep it to yourself. And it's a very interesting concept. But yeah, so that sort of that could probably explain why Scandinavians in general don't really worry about like ranking, so to say. But yeah, anyways, I think this video is becoming too much of a ramble now. I'll stop it here. If you have any questions or comments, leave in the comment section below. Like this video and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this, and I shall see you guys in another video very soon. Peace out.